40 years ago, in a soundstage far, far away, a franchise was started. And now we're doing a podcast about it.
Yay?
Yay! Hello, I am Jared the Greek, and with me is, of course,
Ari Kagami.
And we are the two head people of Scarlet Rhapsody, and basically, we're Star Wars fans since we were like little tiny babies.
I remember when it was on Muppet Babies.
I remember when your family had laser discs of it, and my family had the VHS tapes of it.
Well, we still have our original copy of Return to Jedi and Laserdisc in 16:9 ratio.
It's called Letterboxd.
I like Letterbox.
And we do not have real VHS tapes, but we have the newfangled DVDs of all the special editions. Yay!
We still have our Laserdisc player because of karaoke reasons.
Which means if we want to watch Return of the Jedi in its original version, we totally can.
Hi, this is our first episode.
We're going to ramble a bit, but we actually do have a main topic. I just wanted to kind of give everyone a primer as to kind of how we are as fans. We are not the die-hard, where everything Lucas says is the golden gospel of the almighty Lucas. We are not people who will use the phrase I personally, or actually. We are just, well, you know who we are. You've heard our podcast before. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be listening. Yeah, we hope. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be listening to this one. And we're just going to kind of have fun of Star Wars. You hardcore people might get offended at things we say, and you softcore people might be confused at things we're talking about, but we're going to try our best, even when we go deep into the expanded universe, to explain what we're talking about and where you can read about it.
Yeah, basically, when we want to get more people to be, like, beyond the movies, because something I've noticed on social media is people are just very much focused on, like, the popular movies, which is, like, no fault of their own, but there's, like, a lot more outside of the movies to Star Wars. At least that's just how I see it.
Well,
I'm even talking about Rebels, and I see all these articles like, oh, strong females in Star Wars, but they don't mention Ahsoka, Hera.
Yeah, or even Sabine, and how much character growth she had in Season 3.
So we're here to just talk about, like, the realm beyond the movies, and just hopefully get more people into it.
Yeah, and have some fun with it. We'll keep the spoilers to a minimum-ish. We can't promise that.
And we're also into the Legends canon, because both of us grew up with the Legends canon.
Yeah, and for all future purposes, Legends will refer to all the books, video games, etc. that came out prior to Disney taking control of Lucasfilm. And canon will refer to everything post-Disney taking control. So we'll have to not use the phrase Legends canon anymore. We have to say Legends or canon. That's how they separated it on Wikipedia. It's how they separated on the books when they have the little title banners and things like that. So we'll do our best. Some things are kind of in the middle right now, and we don't quite know where they're going to land. A lot of the Old Republic stuff falls in that category when we get to our Old Republic episode. I assure you, that is coming very soon.
We're probably going to have some guests, like a couple of our friends, because we have friends in Rebel Legion and 501st, to just share their insight on Star Wars fandom and what's to come. So stay tuned for them.
Yeah, we have a lot planned. And this is the first episode, so it's going to be a little less formal, I would say, than any of our other episodes. And if you've listened to Zero Hour, obviously a lot less formal than Zero Hour. But we will be getting there with future episodes once we have everything kind of solidified.
Yeah, so we're still finding our voice, and I say this as I'm going through springtime allergies.
Yeah, aren't we all?
Okay, so on today's episode, what are we talking about, Jared?
We are going to be talking about, well, two things that kind of connect together. Rogue One and Catalyst, a Rogue One story. Which is what the title of the book is. Because we've both been through the book Catalyst, which is really good, and I do actually recommend it. It is James Luceno. My thoughts on it are actually posted in a review, so I'm not going to get too deep into what I thought about it, but I will say this, thumbs up. Spoiler for my review. And the Rogue One comic recently came out with Gareth Edwards promising to have a lot of the deleted scenes and stuff like that show up in that comic, even though issue 1 only leads up to the team landing on Jeddah. So we really haven't seen any cut content because there's not a lot going on in this, the first 22 pages of this comic series. And we both And we both kind of, I think, enjoyed the Rogue One movie.
It was a fun popcorn movie. Like, we actually did a live stream of it on my Facebook page. Just kind of just talk about our thoughts. I think we were more our emotions were much more passionate about the trailers that aired.
Yeah, we had a lot of rage.
But when it came to Rogue One, I think just overall we just generally enjoyed it because it was a different Star Wars movie, but it was still a Star Wars movie.
The way I view the movie is I view it like an Independence Day. And there are people who hate Independence Day out there. I know they exist. That's fine. I like Independence Day. I can watch it whenever. Just throw it on in the background and just kind of enjoy it as Independence Day. The characters aren't deep. The story is kind of cliched. The action is fun and visually appealing. So I feel kind of the same way for Rogue One. The characters aren't deep. The story's not that great, but the action is fun. And I could just, have it in the background while I'm working on this or that, and no problemo. And I kind of like the fact that there's a Star Wars movie in that category because usually you can't just have, unless it's like Empire or something, and I've seen it 2 trillion times, it's weird for me to have a Star Wars on in the background while doing other things. But I have, because I've seen the movies way too many times.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. Like, there were like a couple of weak points here and there, but it's still one that I enjoy seeing.
And for those who don't like it, I fully get not liking this movie, just like I understand not liking Independence Day or any other popcorn brain-dead action movie. And that's all it was a popcorn brain-dead action movie. And it's unfortunate that we're going to get that kind of stuff in Star Wars with Disney trying to pump a movie out every year, which I'm not hugely keen on, but, it's going to happen. It's just like Marvel. There's some terrible movies in the Marvel movie universe. There's going to be terrible movies there already are terrible movies in the Star Wars movie universe. I don't need to mention those ones. We all know what those are. So, it's going to happen.
So, Jared, tell us more about Callus.
So, one of the things that came out prior to the movie was the book Callus by James Luceno. And this tells the story of Jin's father and... let you cough. And his work with kyber crystals and how he kind of gets drawn into the Death Star project without him really knowing, because he's much more about science, he's much more about helping people. He doesn't want to make a super weapon. He has no interest in weapons, he doesn't like war, and he gets manipulated through Krennic into producing a lot of technology that helps move the Death Star project forward. And it kind of ends with them going to the planet from the very beginning of the story. I know it's a spoiler, but this is a prequel to a prequel, and I don't want to spoil the drama that happens within the story. But it will lead you up to the beginning, more or less, of Rogue One. But what is really interesting about this book is the character dynamics, is getting to know little tiny, 2-year-old, 3-year-old Jin.
Tiny Stardust.
Tiny Stardust is adorable.
We need more Tiny Stardust adventures.
And getting to know her parents so that, when certain things happen to the parents in the movie, you're like, no, I like you. And get to know Krennic and see him as being a little... Actually, his personality isn't all that different in the book, to be honest. He's very much a... I deserve this because I exist kind of guy. He's a millennial. Just, I deserve it because I exist.
And he's apparently the namesake for our podcast, Star Wars section of Scarlet Rhapsody.
Because when we saw the original trailer, he's wearing a space cape, and I'm like, oh my god, I kind of want to cosplay as that space cape guy.
And then you saw the movie, and then...
I was like, nah, alright, I guess I'll cosplay a space cape guy.
Only if you have, like, a plush Death Star.
Yes. All the memes that came out of him wanting to drive the Death Star are still highly amusing to me.
I still like the one where it's like, it was done on MS Paint, where it's just him as a stick figure on top of the Death Star.
Yeah, the little, as if it was drawn on a napkin. And it's like, battle station, me! And then I think there's a...
And just like exploding Galen.
And isn't it like the Darth Vader or something? There's someone else is drawn on there. It's just like, wow, Krennic, you're so cool. Mm-hmm. Or it's Tarkin or something like that. You're so cool, Galen. Krennic. And it's really it's one of those kind of stories where you don't really need to know this to watch the movie. Obviously, I saw the movie before I went into the book, but it's really nice just kind of getting to know these characters and seeing the Empire from a kind of a different point of view. With their family kind of moving around and kind of the mining projects, finding out about the mining projects the Empire is doing, seeing how attitudes kind of change from the early days. It actually begins in the Clone Wars, so you kind of see the attitudes in the Clone Wars, then the early days of the Empire, and then moving into 5-6 years after the start of the Empire or thereabouts, where it ends. And it's kind of interesting seeing the attitudes change, seeing the unrest amongst different people as we see things from the perspective of some pilots and smugglers. In addition to the Urso family, in addition to Krennic, in addition to Tarkin, you're getting these different points of views during this early time. And I think that's kind of cool. And because it's written by James Luceno, there's references to the Tarkin book in there as well.
Did he also write the Tarkin book?
Yes, he did. And the Tarkin book gets a lot more verbose than this book, in my opinion. A lot of delving into the minutia of how a Star Destroyer works and the military ranking systems and all that kind of stuff. It gets a lot more verbose and heavy than this one is. This one's more of a family drama versus Tarkin, which is much more of a military drama.
I thought this was more of a horrible bosses drama.
It could be that too. But they're very different tones of story, and he changes up how he tells it. But from Tarkin's perspective, he makes references to his work in the Western Reaches, which is a major part of the Tarkin book. And he makes reference to his meeting with Palpatine, which also is referenced in the Clone Wars episode where he's introduced. He's like, oh yes, I know Palpatine. He's a good man. You actually get the flashback of how they first met, how he made a good impression on Palpatine before Palpatine was even Chancellor. I think it literally occurs before Episode 1 when they first met. But that's a different book, and Tarkin's a talk for another day. But there are little references to that. I thought that was kind of clever that he tied his two books together. And if you go through Catalyst, I would recommend going through Tarkin afterwards. Or if you've gone through Tarkin, I recommend going through Catalyst just to get more of Tarkin's life into your life.
So, what did you think of, I'm just trying to, just think here. So how does Callus, compare to, the current, canon of Star Wars books? How's it hold up?
It is easily one of the better ones. I hold it up there with A New Dawn, Lords of the Sith, and, of course, Tarkin. While Tarkin is verbose and probably not one of the best recommendations to just start out on for your first Star Wars book, I still hold it up there in the high-ranking ones. I mean, there's ones that are kind of mid-range. Weapon of a Jedi is mid-range. Dark Disciple. And then there's the lower-end stuff, like the Aftermath trilogy, and books I'm not going to talk about because I'll get into way too much of a rant.
That's for another podcast.
That's totally for another podcast. But I put it there in the upper end of things. It is compelling, and, you're following a whole bunch of original characters and Tarkin. And I mean, because yes, those characters they're original to Rogue One, but they are in their own ways. It's not the usual, let's follow around Luke and Han and stuff. We don't need to follow around Darth Vader. In fact, I'm not even sure if Darth Vader appears in Catalyst. I don't remember him appearing. I remember him being referenced, but I don't remember him actually showing up.
It's been a while since I've gone through Callus, because I think I've gone through Callus 5 months ago, just after I saw Rogue One. I don't recall Darth Vader showing up, and if he was, maybe it's a spoiler, I don't know. I don't recall any instances of Vader, but I do recall instances of Palpatine, Tarkin, Krennic, and Galen just interacting with each other.
And Palpatine's assistant guy, the guy with the devil horns, if you've seen any of the movies or the Clone Wars TV series, that dude with devil horns who's just hanging up behind him, that guy shows up and does stuff as well, because he's one of Palpatine's major advisors. And I know I would totally trust a man who has the devil standing behind him.
What I like about Callus...
Subtle, Lucas.
One of the things I really like about Callus, the drama there, I think is, its strongest aspect to it. Yes, it is a science fiction novel. Yes, it is part of the Star Wars universe. But you don't have... I just feel just like Rogue One, you don't really have to be focused in too much with the Force and lightsabers and Jedi and Sith to tell a good Star Wars story.
Yeah. And you get different points of view from both Galen Erso and from Lyra. And Lyra Erso as well.
Monies.
They both have their different point of views, and their relationship is actually really like strong and deep.
It's very realistic.
Yes,
and I can say this as someone who's read like a lot of the the Legends stuff, and just kind of like looking at every single relationship in Star Wars. This has to be like one of the strongest and the most realistic relationship dynamic I've ever seen in Star Wars.
Yeah, you can see why they're a couple and why they work for each other, and there are flashbacks to how they met. There's a lot of drama early on during the Clone Wars and where they are both stationed during that time. And you really do feel for the family. And they work so well in the dynamics and the things they think about, the things they talk about. You can tell that clearly either James Luceno is drawing out of his own life experiences, or if not that, the life experiences of people around him, because this is very realistic to how a couple works, how a couple thinks. A stable, good couple, not a terrible, abusive couple. But
I mean, granted, I make jokes about Poe and Finn all the time, and considering, without going into too much detail, about the current canon Han and Leia, which I'm like,
yeah, that's part of that book I hate.
I'm just looking at Galen and Lyra, like, you actually see a realistic, loving couple that wants to support one another. I mean, they're really a lot of stories when you have like two romantic leads pairing up, like, oh, they live happily ever after. These are two just working to just be happy.
Yeah, and dealing with the challenges that come with having a child, the challenges that come with, oh, my job wants me to go here. Well, my job wants me to go here. And will I taking on a job you might not necessarily want, but because you need to support your family.
Yeah, there's just like a lot of really interesting, really human dynamic to it, and I had to like just pause a few times. I was listening to the audiobook, which was narrated by Mark Thompson.
I believe it's Mark Thompson.
Yeah, it was narrated by Mark Thompson, and I just had to like just pause myself a few times, like just throughout the book. Like, oh my god, this just feels so real. And like, yeah, and then you kind of have to take yourself out. Like, yes, this is still a Star Wars novel, but there's just like a lot of realism to it.
It's adding that human element that a lot of the movies and even some of the other expanded universe products, both Legends and canon, always leave out. The fact that it's the human factor that makes you drawn into the story. It's why we liked the original movie. It's why we liked the sequels to the original movie. It's because there's a real human factor. These felt like people you know. This feels like a world you could live in, and not feel lost or confused until someone starts talking in Huttese, and then you may have some issues. Or if you have to read Sabish, that could also be an issue as well. But other than those aspects, you would really be, it feels like a world that you could imagine. It's the same reason why, to go for the anime fans out there, why Cowboy Bebop gets to so many people, or for those not anime fans, Firefly got to so many people. It's because it feels like a future you could see yourself living in. It's not so dramatically different or weird from what we know, and everyone just seems like regular people trying to live regular lives, but they're getting caught up in, extraordinary events. And this book ties into that idea of regular people trying to live regular lives, but getting tied into really extraordinary events, and not of their own accord, of just subtle manipulation here and subtle manipulation there, and before you know it, you're making a laser that can blow up a planet. And one of the things, talking about the realism side of things that got to me a little bit was the dynamic at one point. Galen is working for a company, and his boss is just yelling at him where he's going like, "Sir, I have some ways of improving our efficiency and really making our company do really, really well. Shut up and do exactly what I tell you to do." But boss, I'm telling you right here, I got these notes right here. I can hand them to you right now, and get out of my office. And it's just like, I know people who have gone through that. I know people who are bosses like that. And the whole, you're a low-ranked person, stop talking to me, even if you have good ideas. And
I just want to just take that meme from Office Space and just put Krennic's face on him.
That would be great. See what I did there?
Yes.
Yeah, we were discussing that earlier, and I do think that would be kind of funny. If you could make me a super laser, that'd be great. And I need you to work on Saturday. Yeah, work on Saturday. If Saturdays in Star Wars, I don't know what their week system is set up. I guess it'd be different planet to planet, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Yeah. But I like that human factor a lot.
Now, speaking of human factor and whatnot, now let's bring back the Rogue One movie in. Do you think to really appreciate Rogue One, you have to read Callus.
No. Because, like I said earlier, you can see it as just a big, dumb action movie and enjoy it for being a big, dumb action movie. I think after going through Catalyst, it'll give you a bigger appreciation for the characters, especially, you know, kind of wanting to see Krennic get his comeuppance. Like, Krennic just seems kind of like a failed villain in the movie, but if you get that whole backstory for who he is and how he manipulates people, you're kind of like, you know what, dude? You kind of need your comeuppance. And it's kind of... I wish his comeuppance were a little bit better in the movie, but that's me. I think it's one of the failings of the movie is just... It just gets... I'm not going to spoil the movie, but he doesn't die in a cool, epic way like he should.
Well, I did enjoy Rogue One as a popcorn movie, and I sure go for some popcorn right now.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds good. I'm one of those people who seem to believe that like a movie should be able to stand on its own.
I think it does.
Yeah, but I feel like to really enjoy Rogue One, it should be able to stand on its own. Like, granted, after reading Callus, I'm looking at the characters in new light, like with Lyra, with Galen. Krennic's pretty much the same butthole, so
yeah, it's just kind of an ass.
But I know there is a book that's coming out for Rebel Rising for Jin's story,
and Guardians of the Hills for Baz and Blind Guy.
But just kind of wanted to just also see like just a gap from like you have like this happy kid with this huge imagination just waving around her toys all over the place to like, yeah, I'm a rebel, I guess, whatever.
Yeah, the massively dispassionate rebel who has this long list of crimes she's committed against the Empire, but, you know...
I listened to my dad.
Just kind of did my own thing, I guess.
Here's a speech about hope.
But yeah, the person of no emotion is the one giving the speech about hope. Like, you guys screwed this up. This is supposed to be Mon Mothma's speech. She's the one who's supposed to be talking about hope and the belief in the rebellion, because she's, you know, one of the 3 main founders. But whatever. Crazy left-wing senators and their anti-establishment policies.
Anyway.
Oh, we'll get into Star Wars politics, I assure you.
That episode is coming up eventually, whomever wants to discuss...
Politics with me. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Could pull up my old poli-sci degree, this would be fun. But the movie itself does stand on its own. I think that the one smart thing they're doing with all these books is it's giving you a better appreciation for stuff in the movie. You know, like, I'm reading the comic not only because I'm trying to review every Star Wars issue that comes out each month, which reminds me I really gotta get back and read the Force Awakens comic. I skipped that my first go through on all this. And I've been reviewing since day 1, I believe, but I just kind of... So I was like, I'm not reading that. And I probably should have. But in this, I'm reading it in hopes that some of those scenes from the trailers that get cut out are there, and I can understand what that scene was. Because I'm more intrigued by what was cut out of Rogue One than I was by the movie itself. Because that backstory with just... Even in Gareth Edwards' note at the back of the comic, he's like, oh, you know, otherwise our movie would have been 3.5 hours long. And I'm like...
I've been okay with a 3.5 hour Star Wars.
I want to see that cut.
movie.
Could I get a special Blu-ray with that cut as a version? I want to see the super long... If we're going to do it for Lord of the Rings, let's freaking do it for Star Wars, people. Give me my 3.5 hour version of Rogue One. Hell, I'll take that for Force Awakens. Give me a 3.5 hour version of it. Maybe maybe Rey can have a personality. That'd be great. I'd like to see, Poe do something. Oh, but he flies his X-Wing at the... Oh, whoop-de-doo. I want to see him do something more than just fly his X-Wing. I want to see him have a character interaction.
Finn?
Poe.
No, I meant character reaction and doing something.
Well, yeah, it was something with Finn, ideally, but that probably never got shot. That's an Episode 8 spoiler. That better be an Episode 8 spoiler. Or an EU spoiler, whatever, I don't care. Just someone get on that, Star Wars. We got a bromance brewing, we need to do something with that. I don't have to be gay. Gotta have some bromance adventures.
Yeah, just going back, this is the first of the brand new expanded universe books I've read, because from the way you described it with the current canon of the new novels, like, I really don't feel like reading them, because just from what you described, if you read any of Jared's previous reviews, just seemed just really mediocre, just kind of meh, and just kind of appealing to the Twilight audience.
Well...
Ish.
The thing is that there's books I enjoyed that I just don't think I ever wrote a review for. So the reviews, that we have listed right now are all fairly negative, except for Catalyst.
Yeah, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? I'm open to reading Star Wars novels again because I haven't read a Star Wars novel since I would say ninth grade of high school. I just kind of fell out. I kind of fell out of it because episode one I just kind of became like one of those jaded fans, and I just kind of stayed away from a while. But Callus has just given me a lot of positive thoughts on like just the current run of Star Wars novels. I just finished through Thrawn. I really enjoyed it, and we're probably going to do a show on that once Jared's done with Thrawn.
And probably do a discussion with Legends Thrawn versus Canon Thrawn.
Because I'm currently going through Outbound Flight, which is like the original Legends origin story of Thrawn. So just really interesting to just compare the two.
Yeah, one of the later books done by Timothy Zahn. Also, like on the Timothy Zahn side of things, I actually, in a way, I mean, we can do a whole Timothy Zahn episode, but I really didn't. I have such weird mixed feelings for Tannoy Ghost. And it's a story that occurs, I think, right after Courtship of Princess Leia and like a week before Heir to the Empire. And it's one of those weird things where I'm like, I have such mixed feelings on this book. And I think it is also Zahn. I have to double check on that one, but I just had mixed feelings on it. But, you know, to get back to the author of Catalyst, James Luceno, one of the books he wrote for Legends was Labyrinth of Evil, which is the lead-in to episode 3. And it's so freaking good that I'm like, man, I wish episode 3 was written by this author. And then I found out later it was James Luceno, and I'm like, I wonder what else this guy wrote. And then he wrote more and more and more, and so I've liked him before I even knew who he was. When I was just kind of going through Labyrinth of Evil on a lark. I wonder what the lead-in for episode 3 is. Go through it. Oh my god, this is really good. Why is episode 3 not this good? He writes everyone so well and gives an explanation for why Grievous isn't dead yet. His explanation is the guy just gets away all the time. He tries to avoid combat with Jedi unless he knows he can win. Which is what they kind of do in Clone Wars-ish. Though I still stand that Anakin at any point could have pulled his limbs off with the Force. Like the way a psychotic kid would do with like an ant. But that being said, I do like Luceno's work, and I'm glad he's one of the main people of canon. And I'm hoping Zahn gets a few more books in as well. Even they don't have to be Thrawn-centric. He could write about whatever. Tannoy Ghost, Thrawn is a very vague reference. He is very tiny in that book. And it's more about Han and Leia's feelings about, you know, her father and her feelings about possibly being a mother and things like that are kind of get into her. Those family deep drama things that you don't normally explore in Star Wars. And so, but again, like I said, I have really mixed feelings in that book because it feels like it's an unnecessary story. At the same time, Leia's inner struggles are actually really fascinating to kind of learn about because you realize that totally should exist. And they've been kind of tapping into that, I'd say, a little bit with the new canon. Because, like, the Princess Leia comic and the Star Wars comics, and even the Han Solo comic, all kind of have a little bit of Leia dealing with the PTSD of her entire homeworld being destroyed, and her kind of inappropriate way of handling it, which I think is really interesting to kind of go through, realizing that, like, yeah, Leia had to just suppress all that or she would break down completely. So it's kind of... that psychology is being explored, and, you know, it's unfortunate that there are some bad books, and yeah, the ones I need to review, I always review, are always the negative ones. But, you know, even in I introduced you to A New Dawn, which is how Kanan and Hera from Rebels met. And I really liked that book. That was the first one they released, and it was a strong entry. And that was the one that made me go, hey, should I start writing down my reviews and my thoughts on my Tumblr about these various Star Wars canon things? And that's the book that made me kind of consider it. And I think it wasn't until I got through Lords of the Sith that I started deciding to... It was Force Friday. I was exploiting Force Fridays while I did that.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about New Dawn in probably our next podcast or something, just discussing New Dawn and Rebels and pairings we like.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting to see, you know, like the Legends, there's a lot of books that are good and a lot of books that are bad, and this is one of those surprising ones, just kind of like Labyrinth of Evil. It's surprising to say this mediocre movie got this really good lead-in book because the author is really talented and can tell a compelling story that really makes you want to get to the end and know what happens. And I'm hoping that the other two books they're releasing that are going to be tie-in backstory books are going to be just as compelling. And if they are, I'd be fine with a Cassian and K2 story as well, or a comic, or what have you. I think that'd be great. Or if they show up in the Rebels TV series, the way Saw has made a couple of cameos in Rebels, or one cameo in Rebels, and it's going to show up again this season. It's one of those things I'd really like to see more of, but the quality has got to be the thing. And I don't want people to think, oh, Rogue One was meh, so I'm not going to read this book. This is a great book tying into a meh movie. And, I really want the books and the comics to be good. So when I rant about them in reviews, there's a reason for it. The reason is I want this to be good. Please be good. I don't want to waste 10, 20, 30 hours of my life going through something and being like, well, that was a waste of time, and now I feel like bashing my head into a wall. Going through a bad book is not fun, and when you're trying to review something, you want to get to the end. There's only one book review I've written that is yet to be posted. There's a book I could not get past first 4 or 5 chapters of. And I wrote a whole review based around that fact, but I couldn't do it. And I think that's unfortunate, but I don't want people, to dismiss the entirety of the new canon because of that.
So you would highly recommend Callus, I take it?
Yes, and read my full review. I go a bit more into it and why it's good and the standout characters and what have you. So, I don't want to go off on a whole description of every aspect of the book. You can read the review. It is right there on Scarlet Rhapsody. And, at the end of it, I think I do post other books that I think are good as well, as I usually do. And normally it's when I'm reading a negative book, a negative review, I tend to try to end it with, skip this and read the following instead. But this is one of the rare times I think I'm like, I love this book, and if you want more good books like this one, try this and this. So.
Yeah, the paperback should be out this week, so before you watch Rogue One again, I highly recommend just going through Callus. It is I listened to the audio version, but I just wanted more and more, just kind of as I got through each chapter, because I just really like getting to know the Ursos and just all the political drama and play between the Empire and Galen.
Yeah, and then it isn't built around rebellion or any of that kind of stuff either. So you're seeing a very different perspective than you normally see.
Like we said earlier, it feels like more like a family/work drama type of thing, but that's where it's the strongest, and it's still a Star Wars book at the end of the day. So what do we have next to review? It's next on our list.
Well, it's going to be I'm going to try to get through Thrawn so I can catch up with you and we can talk about Thrawn in both universes.
Yeah, I suppose until then, I guess we could talk about New Dawn.
And New Dawn, yeah. If we're going to be talking about characters from the Rebels cartoon, like Thrawn, then New Dawn is always up there too. I actually probably need to go through that again before discussing, but that's like saying, hey, do you want to eat a tasty chocolate candy? And I'm like, oh, do I? Yes, please. So I'm not going to complain about having to go through New Dawn again.
We're hoping to have at least an episode up maybe every 2 weeks or so. But this is pretty much just our brand new podcast for Scarlet Rhapsody. We've been wanting to do this for quite some time, and we wanted to release it on May 4th.
And we did. Happy birthday, me.
Happy birthday, Jared.
Well, I think we wrapped this up the way we used to do it in church. May the Force be with you.
And also with you.
Lift up your lightsabers.
We lift them up to the Force. Amen.
In the name of the Obi-Wan, the Yoda, and the Skywalker family. We'll figure it out.
So do we have this feels like blue milk, the blood of Luke?
Oh, God. Catholic jokes.